Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and tonight I just got back from watching Final Destination Bloodlines, which is the 6th Final Destination movie, and this is a franchise that I've been watching since I was a kid, probably along with a lot of millennials. You know, Final Destination 2, don't ever drive behind log trucks, won't do it. You know, so this has just been a thing that's just, I don't know why Final Destination has such staying power. I think it's because you know, there's not like a central villain or even a central cast of characters. It's just, hey, you want to see some crazy, inventive, insane shit? Here you go. And that's just what every movie is. Some of them are better than others, but yeah, Final Destination Bloodlines. This one was interesting. I feel like I need to sit and like stew on it for a while before like I really like know how I feel about it within the context of the greater franchise itself. I will say it's, you know, it's on the better side of things. You know, I think at least 3 of the movies so far are decent, and this one is, you know, it's not number 4, you know. It's not 4, which I think is easily the worst one. And it does do some interesting things where it introduces things to the lore and the mythology. Kind of frustratingly so, it does not give you a lot more than like what you get at the very beginning, okay? It gives you some, but not everything you want. And it feels like every single time they make one of these, I'm like, just answer some basic questions. And maybe they feel like it'll lose some of its magic if they do answer those questions. I'm not really sure. The things that I've always wondered about are, number 1, who is giving the protagonists these premonitions? Because the whole idea is that they see a vision of this crazy, you know, deadly event before it happens, and they are able to prevent that event from happening by warning people, and thus death feels like its design has been ruined, so it has to basically hunt down these people one by one because its plan has been ruined by whoever got this premonition. So my question has always been, since I was a kid, who is giving them the premonitions? Where's that coming from? You know, and that has never once really been explained. You know, I feel like we get some throwaway comments in some of the movies. We're like, oh, what are you, psychic or something? Were you just seeing the future now? But like, that's all we really get. And so to me, it's always been like, there must be some opposing force out there that's not death, that is like giving these people premonitions and clues and letting them see things, trying to help them out. But the franchise has never dove into that. The franchise has never, like, you know, basically peeled that back and saying like, what's happening exactly? Where did this come from? And I don't know, this one also does not give us those answers, and it's kind of frustrating because it feels like if we were ever going to get those answers, it was probably going to be this one, because really the interesting twist they put on it this time is that we're dealing with an event that happened way back in the 60s, and we see it's all about how the ripple effects of all those people living, you know, how those ripple effects affected things throughout the decades, because people lived and then they had kids, and then those kids had kids, and then, you know, that's the title, Bloodlines. And we're focused on this one main family here throughout this whole thing, but the implications are far reaching, right? Like, as to like, you know, they even like detail how like, oh look, over the decades, death has been killing off these family members one by one. It killed the dad, and then it killed the son, and then it killed the grandson, and death is just doing this one by one, family by family, in the order that they would have died in back in that accident back in the 60s, because it was like hundreds of people, and, you know, a certain percentage of them all had kids and stuff. So death had a lot of people it had to get through, because none of those people were supposed to exist, right? So that's a really cool idea for this franchise. Now, having said that, it does feel a little unfortunate that we're pretty much stuck with this one family, and I feel like it would have been cool if we like were introduced to several families, you know, or like they made a post online where they tried to like, hey, if your grandparents were at this event in the 60s, like, you know, we I don't know, something like if there was like a way you could like put out a Reddit post or something where you're like trying to warn people, it would have been like kind of a cool idea to play around with. But they don't really play around with it after that. They introduce it, but then you're focused on this one group of like 5 people, and it's like, oh man, there's so much more you can do here. And I do feel like I need to address kind of the fan theory that was happening going into this movie. So the fan theory was that this was going to connect all of the protagonists from the previous movies, that somehow everyone that has all the main characters were related, you know, either their grandparents or great grandparents or whatever were at this event in the 60s, and thus none of these people were meant to be alive. And so that's why death has been following these people. It's because it's been trying to clean up this since the beginning, since the 60s, right? So, you know, the people in the first movie and the people in the second movie, they were all somehow related to someone in that big crowd of people, right? Which is a really cool idea. And I will say the movie leaves open the implication that that could be true, but it does not outright confirm it to be true. She puts together a big timeline, and I did not see anything on those newspaper clippings that was directly related to specific names and specific characters that we've seen in the franchise before. So if you're going into this hoping that like, oh, we're gonna, you know, we're gonna tie this all together, it feels like it could, but they do not directly say that, and they don't really show that. And the one kind of logical flaw and kind of something they introduce in this movie that maybe prevents them from saying that is because they explain that like, oh, death is trying to take out the family members in a specific order. So it's got to take out the dad, and then it's got to take out the oldest son, and then the middle child son, and then the youngest son, and then it'll go over to the sister side of the family, and then it'll take out the oldest daughter, and then you know, like it takes them out in specific orders. Basically what I'm saying is that if this theory were all true, that means that Alex's parents in the first movie, either his dad or his mom, whoever was related, they would have had to have died before it started going after Alex, because that is, you know, in this movie that's how they explain it works for this one. So, you know, if that theory were true, it feels like it does have some holes in it. So I don't know, it's up to you guys if you want to stick with the theory. It feels like the movie is just okay with that being open for interpretation. So I don't know, I'm okay with the theory, but also I acknowledge like, there's some logic holes in it. But let's be honest, this franchise has never been like airtight with its logic. There are definitely some times where I'm questioning like, so wait, why is death willing to do this but it's not willing to do that? How does that make any sense? You know, so anyways, basically this is a franchise where if you think about it way too much, you're gonna start realizing how little it makes sense, because death has these rules sometimes, but then just ignores them other times. So it's like, whatever. Anyways, having said all of that, I will say some of the cast that you see in this movie are pretty good comedic relief. They're pretty great characters, some of them. Other ones, unfortunately, I think the two leads, like the brother and sister lead, are, you know, they're more here for the dramatic side of things, and they're not nearly as entertaining as characters. You know, they feel kind of just cookie cutter bland, you know, whereas some of the side characters were funnier, and at least until they, you know, died, they were at least more entertaining to watch. Also, I will say, they did a great job with the marketing of this movie, because they definitely like made you think you were seeing things that when you watch the movie, they turn out to not exactly be what you think you're seeing. And I think that was really smart of them, because, you know, you'll see when you watch the movie. But yeah, the marketing was pretty great in its ability to kind of mislead you about several things. And yeah, overall, I did enjoy this one. Some other things that kind of introduced him to the mythology, and I think this is really its biggest contribution. We finally got an explanation for Bloodworth, the coroner, the mortician coroner guy. Tony Todd. You know, he's been in almost all of the movies, and he's always been like this kind of creepy presence. And you know, I remember back in the day when I was a kid, people thought that Tony Todd's character was maybe the Grim Reaper, maybe it was death itself. Like, he seems to know so much, and he's, you know, obviously he's always like doing these really creepy scenes trying to explain the rules to the characters, and you never really get any explanation as to who he was. How does he know this stuff? Is he a normal human, or is he actually like a supernatural thing? What's going on there? And in this movie, we finally get an answer, and I'm pretty satisfied with the answer. I feel like some people maybe won't be. Some people are probably gonna wish that he was something else, but I'm satisfied with this. And of course, Tony Todd has passed, you know, rest in peace. And this being his send-off of the character, I feel like this was a good way to do it. You know, we got some answers. I'm okay with the answers. And then, you know, the character's gone and Tony Todd's gone, and I'm okay with that being the end of it. You know, I feel like that was a pretty satisfying way to tie everything together. Having said that, the ending of this movie, you know, look, Final Destination movies usually end one way. You know what I mean? So if you've seen, you know, one or two of them, you probably know exactly how this one's gonna end. And I gotta say, I don't know, it felt a little anticlimactic, this one, for me. It feels like, I don't know, maybe it was a reshoot, maybe they originally had different fates for some of the characters. The way it ends, I'm like, okay, I guess that's fine, whatever. And then the movie ends, and it kind of sucks that it ended that way, because if they were going to lean more into, you know, the idea that this one family and this one lady's premonition from the 60s was actually connected to everything, it feels like, oh, you had a lot of room to basically pump out a bunch of sequels to this. You know, you could have had them going off and trying to find other families that were connected to this, and you know, somehow it all like tied together, and it feels like you could have done something really cool, but we're definitely not going to get that. So I don't know, any kind of future plans they might have for this franchise, they're not going to use this as its framework, which is kind of a shame, because it feels like you definitely could have gotten some stuff out of this premise. Like, this could have carried you for a couple movies, and I think people would have gone along with it, because, you know, Final Destination is a franchise that kind of starts fresh every movie. You got fresh new cast, and then they're probably all gonna die, and you just got to start over, and the characters have to relearn what the rules are and how they work, and they usually meet Tony Todd again, and that's what the franchise has always been. So I'm like, okay, you can keep this premise and then just make sequels to this direct movie, and that can be like its own, like, now we have a actual continuation of a story going on. But they didn't go that route. It's not happening. That's kind of unfortunate. I was a little frustrated, because I'm like, oh man, you know, if you just tweaked a couple things, you have an amazing premise. Like, this is this is great for this franchise, but unfortunately they just didn't do it that way. So I don't know. Anyways, yeah, let me know what you guys think about Final Destination Bloodlines. Let me know what you think about the franchise overall. Do you wish that they would try to put in more like actual mythology and answer questions? I think that's the big thing for me. You know, you're 6 movies in, right? And there's like some basic questions that we're not addressing, you know, and maybe they feel like, oh, if we explained who gave the premonitions, if we explained why these specific people are getting them, then the magic is gone or something. I don't know. I don't know why. I'm sure it's been, you know, attempted in some writing room. I'm sure at least one of these sequels, someone at some stage was like, what if we tried to, you know, nail down like why this is happening? But they have yet to do it. So I don't know. I think for me, this is a decent entry. It's got some really great ideas. It does some great things with like the Mortician, specifically Tony Todd's character. But I still wish they pushed a little bit further. You know, like you could generate some real interest in this franchise if you decided to like start legitimately building your lore, you know, like you're 6 movies in, what are you hesitating for, right? Like, start explaining things. I want to know. Like, even if that might ruin like the mystique of it or something, like, I don't know, like how many of these sequels can you pump out before no one's going to them? Like, by the time you get to number 7, like, just start answering some questions. That's all I'm saying. Anyways, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.